There is a war raging within you, not out in the open, not fought with swords or bullets, but waged in the quiet, dim corners of your mind. A war over your will, your purpose, your very essence. And the most dangerous battles are not the ones you see, but the ones you never even realize you are fighting. They told you it's harmless. They told you it's natural, even healthy. They sold you the idea that you could indulge without consequence, that pleasure without price was your right. But they never told you what it was costing you in the unseen realms. They never told you that every private act reshapes the architecture of your soul. Behind closed doors, in the glow of a screen, a quiet exchange is made, a moment of pleasure traded for a piece of your strength, a flicker of ecstasy bartered for clarity, ambition, and spiritual authority. And all the while something ancient and dark watches, feeds, and waits. Lewis once warned, "The safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. That gentle slope today is paved with endless dopamine hits, with instant gratification that leaves you emptier than before. It is no longer just a moral issue, nor merely a matter of biology. It has become a spiritual battlefield. And here's the secret no one wants to tell you. You are not just wasting time. You are leaking power, the creative force within you, the divine energy meant to build, to conquer, to love deeply and live fully. It is being siphoned, drop by drop. You feel it in your lethargy, in your fractured attention, in your quiet shame. This is not just about lust. This is about captivity, and it's time to break the chains. One, the battle you never saw coming. There is a battle most people will never see, yet it shapes their destiny more than any external war ever could. It's not fought on battlefields or in boardrooms, not measured in medals or trophies. It's fought deep within the human soul, in the silent moments no one else witnesses. This is the battle you never saw coming, and its most dangerous weapon is subtle. The world teaches you to prepare for visible threats, poverty, failure, rejection, but few are ever warned about the slow erosion of the will, the gradual draining of spiritual vitality that happens when we surrender to hidden addiction. Masturbation, often dismissed as harmless, natural, even healthy, has become one of the most underestimated spiritual battlegrounds of our age. This is not merely a battle of flesh and blood. It is a battle of sovereignty. Each time you give in to lust, you are not just indulging an appetite, you are training your mind to kneel before impulse. You are surrendering your throne to the lowest parts of yourself, and when the body leads, the spirit weakens. Lewis warned that hell's path is not paved with sudden disasters, but with small, repeated compromises. And here's the truth most refuse to face. It's not the single moment that destroys you. It's the pattern. One moment becomes two. Two becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. And without even noticing, you wake up one day hollowed out, a shell of the man or woman you were meant to be. What makes this battle so vicious is that it hides in plain sight. While you chase that next fleeting high, something ancient and dark watches, feeds, and waits. Masturbation is not just a physical act, it's a spiritual transaction. Every time you choose it over self-mastery, you trade a piece of your inner authority, a slice of your God-given strength. The world mocks this battle, laughing at those who resist, shaming them as repressed or naive. But the few who see it for what it truly is, they are the ones who rise. They are the ones who reclaim their energy, their focus, their purpose. This battle was never about repression, it was about liberation, and only those who dare to fight it will taste the freedom on the other side. The spiritual hijacking of desire. Desire, at its core, is not the enemy. Desire is divine. It was placed in you as a fire to move you toward purpose, love, creation, and transcendence. It's the engine behind every act of greatness, the fuel that drives a man to build, to protect, to rise beyond himself. But here's where the danger enters. When desire is hijacked, when it's distorted into craving without meaning, it becomes the perfect tool for your destruction. The spiritual realm understands this far better than most people do. Demonic forces don't need to destroy you outright. All they need to do is redirect your desires. They don't attack the fire, they just change its aim. Instead of reaching upward toward God, excellence, or mastery, they aim it downward into addiction, passivity, and self-obsession. That's the essence of spiritual hijacking, taking something sacred and twisting it into something that enslaves. Think of it this way. Sexual energy is among the most powerful forces you carry. It's creative, generative, and deeply tied to your spiritual life. But when it's reduced to mere consumption, when it's wasted in isolation through endless cycles of masturbation, that power doesn't just evaporate, it feeds something. It feeds the lower nature, the ego, the shadow, and in the spiritual realm it feeds the forces that thrive on your weakness and fragmentation. Neville Goddard once said, "Imagination is the beginning of creation." But when your imagination is hijacked by lust and fantasy, you're no longer creating, you're destroying. You're shaping neural pathways, emotional patterns, and spiritual agreements that pull you deeper into bondage. And make no mistake, this is not harmless indulgence. It's a slow erosion of will. Over time, the man who gives himself over to hijacked desires becomes a man divided, one part longing for greatness, the other enslaved to impulse. And in that split, demons find their foothold. To reclaim your life, you must reclaim your desire, not by killing it, but by purifying and elevating it, by aiming it back toward purpose, connection, and divine alignment. Desire was meant to be your rocket fuel, not your anchor. 3. The chains you forged in secret. The most dangerous chains are the ones we forge in secret, not the chains slapped on us by others, but the ones we wrap around our own souls while the world isn't watching. Masturbation, when left unchecked, becomes one of the most deceptive tools of bondage. It starts as curiosity, then routine, and before long it's no longer just an act, it's a cage. The reason this is so dangerous isn't because of the physical act alone, but because of what it does to the architecture of the soul. Every time you indulge in secret, you strengthen the wiring of compulsion. You tell your brain, "I cannot resist. I am ruled by this." Over time, that message moves from the body into the spirit. What begins in the flesh hardens into the belief, "This is who I am." And once identity is corrupted, the enemy has a foothold. Billy Graham once said, "When you lose your conscience, you lose your anchor." The repeated practice of secret indulgence dulls the conscience. You stop hearing the quiet voice of conviction. You rationalize, minimize, explain away. You live a double life, strong on the surface, fractured underneath. And here's the cost. Every act in secret reinforces the habit of self-betrayal. You become a master at breaking promises to yourself. It doesn't stop at you. Secret chains ripple outward. They touch your relationships, your work, your dreams. When the body rules, the spirit weakens. When lust dominates, vision dims. You lose not just energy but authority. You start shrinking from challenges, second-guessing your worth, and tolerating mediocrity in every area of life. The tragedy is not that you fell, it's that you stayed on the ground. The more you repeat the cycle, the more you train yourself to accept defeat as normal. And the enemy loves nothing more than a man or woman who has made peace with their chain. But here's the truth. You were not designed for slavery. You were designed to rule over your desires, not be ruled by them. The chains forged in secret can be broken, but only when you stop pretending they aren't there. Only when you bring what's hidden into the light can true freedom begin. 4. The demonic economy. What they steal from you. There is a hidden economy beneath the surface of your life, an invisible system of exchange where every choice has a spiritual cost. And when it comes to masturbation, the price is far higher than you've been led to believe. This is the demonic economy, a ruthless trade where demons steal from you under the cover of pleasure, leaving you bankrupt in the very areas that matter most. First, they steal your time. What begins as a moment of indulgence quietly turns into hours, days, even years lost. Time is the one resource you can never recover, and the enemy knows this. While you surrender to temporary escape, the hours that could have been used to build, create, serve, or grow slip away. Great dreams die not through dramatic failures, but through the slow bleeding of wasted moments. Second, they steal your clarity. Every act of compulsive lust muddies the waters of the mind. What once seemed clear becomes foggy. You can't hear God as sharply. You can't feel your own convictions as deeply. Decisions become harder. Focus slips. Masturbation scrambles the inner compass, making it easier for dark forces to whisper lies and lead you into confusion and despair. Third, they steal your ambition. Sexual energy is creative energy. It's the fuel of builders, innovators, lovers, and warriors. But when squandered on lust, that power turns inward, corroding your drive. You no longer hunger for challenge or sacrifice. You settle for comfort, for mediocrity. The will that was meant to shape nations now struggles to make it through the day. Fourth, they steal your spiritual authority. The moment you bow to lust, you lose ground in the spirit. You carry guilt into your relationships. You hesitate in prayer. You feel unworthy to lead, to speak, to stand with boldness. The authority that comes from a pure and disciplined life is traded for secrecy and shame, and the demons laugh because they know that a man or woman without authority is no threat to them. This is the real cost, not just in the body, but in the soul. The demonic economy is merciless, but here's the truth. When you begin to reclaim what's been stolen, hell trembles, because a man who rises from bondage becomes a threat to every dark force that once chained him. The possession of the mind, the most dangerous battlefield, is not the body, it's the mind. Masturbation, when turned into compulsion, is not just a physical act. It becomes a doorway, a small, seemingly harmless habit that opens the gates for deeper spiritual invasion. Over time, it leads to the possession of the mind. And this is where the true destruction happens. First, understand this. Repeated indulgence reshapes your brain's wiring. What begins as a moment of pleasure soon conditions the mind to crave, to chase, to depend. The imagination, once meant for creation, vision and purpose, becomes hijacked by lust. The mind, once sharp and free, becomes fogged and enslaved to a cycle of craving and guilt. This is no accident. This is how spiritual enemies work. As Lewis wrote in the Screwtape Letters, it is funny how mortals always picture us as putting things into their minds. In reality, our best work is done by keeping things out. Demonic forces do not need to scream to gain control. They whisper, they redirect, they numb you to the voice of your own conscience, until you no longer notice the drift. Second, addiction becomes a form of spiritual colonization. Each time you give in, you surrender territory within your soul. The battle is no longer about whether you fall, but about how much ground you're willing to lose. And here's the terrifying truth. Demons feed not on the act itself, but on the erosion of your will. They want your yes when you should say no. They want the fracture of your self-command. Third, lust distorts perception. It warps the way you see yourself, others, and the world. People become objects. Time becomes disposable. Purpose becomes a distant echo. You were designed for greatness, yet you settle for momentary numbness. And in that settling, your mind narrows, your spirit dulls, and your potential is leached away. Lastly, the enemy's goal is not just your fall, it's your paralysis. The possessed mind doubts its own strength. It feels unworthy of prayer, unworthy of dreams, unworthy of rising. That's the ultimate trap, to keep you in a cage with the key in your own pocket, never realizing you can walk out. The war is not just over your body, it's for your throne, your mind, and the time to reclaim it is now. 6. Isolation. The devil's workshop. Isolation is the devil's workshop, and few places are more fertile for spiritual decay than the mind locked away in secrecy. What begins as a private indulgence soon mutates into a prison of shame. Masturbation, especially when driven by compulsion, isolates not just the body but the soul. The more you indulge, the more you retreat. Friends fade. Intimacy with real people feels burdensome. Social connection becomes hollow, even threatening. Why face the challenge of vulnerability when you can disappear into a world of artificial pleasure where no one can judge you? But here's the danger. Isolation is where the enemy gains the upper hand. It's in the silence of shame that dark whispers grow loud. Guilt festers in the shadows, unchallenged by truth. Without accountability, without the friction of real human connection, you become a kingdom of one, vulnerable, exposed, and easy prey for spiritual attack. C.S.LEWIS captured this so well in the Screwtape Letters, where a senior demon counsels his apprentice, the safest road to hell is the gradual one. Isolation doesn't usually feel like a plunge. It feels like a slow drift, a missed call here, a cancelled plan there, until one day you find yourself alone in a crowd, disconnected from meaning, purpose, and love. And when you are alone, the voice of condemnation speaks loudest. It tells you that you're unworthy, that you're broken beyond repair, that no one would understand. It feeds you the lie that no one else struggles, that your battle is uniquely shameful. And so the cycle tightens. Isolation leads to indulgence. Indulgence leads to shame, and shame drives you further into isolation. But the enemy's greatest fear is exposure, because where the light comes in, the darkness flees. Breaking the cycle means confronting the lie of isolation head-on. It means stepping back into connection, into honesty, into community. True transformation rarely happens in solitude. It happens in the friction of relationship, where iron sharpens iron. Remember this: secrecy empowers the stronghold, but confession weakens its grip. The devil thrives in isolation, but he trembles when you step into the light. You were never meant to fight this battle alone. 7. Energy leaks and spiritual weakness. Energy is the currency of life. Every thought, every action, every dream you chase requires energy. But what few understand is that not all energy loss is physical. There is a deeper leak, a spiritual hemorrhage that slowly drains the vitality from a person's life. Masturbation, when it becomes compulsive and rooted in lust, becomes one of the most efficient tools for this leak. On the surface, it looks like a brief release, a moment of escape, but underneath, it chips away at something far more precious: your creative and spiritual strength. The body was designed to store and channel life force. Call it sexual energy, creative power, or divine vitality. This energy is not meant to stagnate or be squandered. It is meant to build, to create, to fuel purpose. Ancient wisdom across cultures has long taught this, from Taoist Qi to yogic prana to biblical principles of self-control. But when a man or woman gives themselves over repeatedly to lust and release without restraint, they become like a cracked vessel. They cannot hold their own power. This is why many who fall into the cycle of constant self-gratification often report feeling drained, unfocused, restless, and spiritually dry. Their ambition dulls. Their confidence wavers. Their ability to pursue higher goals is compromised, not because they lack potential, but because they are leaking the fuel meant to drive them forward. Worse, this creates a vicious cycle. The more drained you feel, the more you seek shallow pleasure for comfort. The more you indulge, the weaker you become. Over time, you stop fighting for greatness and settle for survival. But when you begin to reclaim this energy, when you practice restraint, discipline, and intentionality, you will feel the difference. Mental clarity sharpens, confidence returns, motivation ignites. You begin to walk in alignment with your higher self, no longer ruled by impulse but guided by purpose. This is not about repression, it's about stewardship. Your energy is sacred. Guard it fiercely, channel it wisely, and you will rise with a strength that few around you even recognize, a strength the world desperately needs. The collapse of inner authority is one of the most devastating yet least recognized consequences of habitual masturbation. At first, it feels small, almost invisible. You tell yourself you'll quit tomorrow. You say it's the last time. You promise you're in control. But every time you return to the same pattern, a crack forms in the foundation of your will. And over time, those cracks spread, until one day you wake up and realize you no longer trust yourself. Inner authority is the backbone of a powerful life. It's the ability to command your own mind, to direct your body, to choose your path and stick to it when no one is watching. Without it, you are a house divided, a man or woman split against themselves. And the tragedy is that most people don't even realize they've surrendered this authority until they face a real challenge and find themselves paralyzed by doubt and guilt. Every act of self-betrayal leaves a mark. It teaches your subconscious that you are not trustworthy, that your own word means nothing. This is how the cycle deepens. You slip, you feel guilt. The guilt robs you of strength, and the lack of strength leads to another slip. It's a slow erosion of spiritual backbone. Demons, whether you understand them metaphorically, psychologically, or spiritually, exploit this fracture. They don't need to shatter you with one blow. They just need to weaken your walls until you crumble under your own weight. Your goals feel heavier. Your dreams, your confidence shrinks, not because you lack talent or intelligence, but because you've lost the muscle of self-command. C.S.LEWIS said that hell begins with a small grumbling mood that grows and solidifies until the man himself is the grumble. In the same way, repeated compromise shapes you into someone ruled by craving, rather than conviction. Rebuilding inner authority requires more than willpower. It requires repentance, humility, and a relentless commitment to rebuild trust with yourself. Small wins matter. Keeping your word matters. Every act of self-mastery, no matter how small, is a brick in the fortress of your authority. Without inner authority, you are vulnerable to every passing temptation. With it, you become a force hell itself trembles to face. 9. The road to redemption. Redemption is not just about stopping a behavior, it's about transforming the soul. The road to redemption from the grip of masturbation isn't merely about abstinence or self-control. It's about reclaiming your identity, your power, and your God-given purpose. First, it begins with repentance, not shallow guilt, but deep, honest repentance. This means recognizing the weight of what's been lost: time, energy, clarity, dignity. Repentance isn't about wallowing in shame, but about turning away from the old path and facing toward the light. It is the courageous act of saying, I will no longer live as a slave. Second comes accountability. Secrets are the devil's playground. The longer you keep your struggle in the dark, the more it grows. Find a trusted mentor, a counselor, or a spiritual guide. Speak the truth out loud. Light weakens the enemy. Every hidden thing brought into the open begins to lose its grip. Third, renew the mind. Lust reshapes the brain, but so can discipline, prayer, and meditation. Flood your mind with what elevates you. Feed your imagination with visions of strength, purity, purpose. Neville Goddard taught that imagination is the foundation of reality. So reimagine yourself, not as a captive, but as a free man or woman, walking in divine authority. Fourth, build discipline. Without discipline, desire will rule you. Reclaim your mornings, your routines, your body. Fast, train, pray, practice saying no, not just to lust, but to any lower impulse. Discipline sharpens your will and rebuilds the muscles of self-mastery that lust has eroded. Fifth, reconnect to your sacred purpose. You were made for more than momentary pleasure. Ask, what am I here to build? Who am I here to serve? Reclaim your masculine or feminine essence, your capacity to love deeply, to create, to lead, to sacrifice. Finally, embrace grace. You will fall, but the difference now is you rise, again and again. God's grace is not a license to sin. It is the divine power to get back up and keep walking. Redemption is not perfection. It is progress. It is a journey from enslavement to sovereignty, from fragmentation to wholeness, from darkness into blazing, unstoppable light. In the end, this is not just about breaking a habit. It's about reclaiming the life you were meant to live. It's about waking up from the fog of shame, lethargy, and distraction, and stepping into a life of clarity, strength, and purpose. You are not created to be ruled by your impulse. You are not made to wander through life exhausted, scattered, and enslaved by momentary pleasures that leave you emptier every time. You were created for dominion over your mind, over your body, over your destiny. You were made to carry light into dark places, to become a living testament to what redemption looks like in flesh and blood. And though the battle is fierce, you are not alone. Countless before you have walked this road. They have fallen, yes, but they have risen, and so will you. The demonic consequences of masturbation are real. They steal energy, purpose, connection, and divine authority. But here is the greater truth. No chain is so strong that it cannot be broken. No pit is so deep that grace cannot reach it. This is your call to arms, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Now, step into the fire of transformation. Turn from what enslaves you and run toward the life waiting on the other side. Discipline is your sword, accountability is your shield, grace is your covering, purpose is your banner. There is a version of you waiting, stronger, clearer, bolder, fully alive. The world doesn't need more men and women numbed by pleasure. It needs souls ablaze with vision and power. So rise. You were not made to crawl in the dark. You were made to walk in the light and set others free.